Ron, which is not a whole lot. I know where Ron works, right here at the Hanford Insurance Agency, right in the Triangle. I know that Ron is on the school board. Been there, done that. Not that easy. I know that Ron is married to one of my daughter's classmates, the beautiful Lisa Norman from Erie. I know she's tuned in there. Hey, Lisa, you've been here for 3 years, and I finally saw you the other day there at Casey's. Anyway, Ron is going to tell us just a little bit about himself, how he got to Erie. I have no idea, but maybe Lisa had something to do with that. And we're going to talk about Ron's recent trip to Honduras and see what it's like down there. And I'm not really even sure what all he did down there. But anyway, welcome into the studio there, Ron.
Thanks, Uncle Tim. Appreciate it.
And hey, tell us, give me a little bit of background on you. Like I say, I know where you work. I know what you look like. I know you're on the school board. That's about it.
Yeah, so we came from the suburbs of Chicago. That's where I grew up. And a few years ago, had a pretty neat opportunity. I got a phone call out of the blue from the owner of Hanford Insurance. And, it was a great opportunity, I felt like, for us. Lisa and I kind of talked it over and everything. And, Erie was always a place that we thought would be a great place to raise a family, and just a lot of neat opportunities being close to her family. And so it really worked out that we were able to make this decision. It was super fast. I mean, basically I got a call, I think it was on a Saturday. Lisa and I were at a store together, and pretty much a couple weeks later I had the first interview. I think a couple weeks later I had the offer, and then like the day after that we had a house bought. So it just all kind of lined up and worked out great.
I've never seen that house. I know right where it is, and it looks beautiful. I've always liked that out there. You're going to be making a lot of trips back and forth with those 3 kids. Tell me, are the kids listening tonight?
Yeah, they are. They should be. Hannah, Aubrey, and Cade should be out there listening, so they're pretty excited.
All right, and give me the ages on those kids. Gail has seen at least a couple of them.
Yeah, so Hannah's in 7th grade, so she's 12. Aubrey is 11 in 5th grade, and Cade is 10. He's in 4th grade. Well, he's almost 10. Sorry, he's 9.
All right, a good reason to be on the school board. You're going to be busy with kids in the school system for a while, so good for you.
Thank you.
Like I say, I've been on the school board and the town board. I think the school board's the toughest. I mean, it's not easy. So don't anybody be complaining until you go sit at some of those meetings and see what it's all about. Anyway, Ron, I know that recently you were about, from my calculations, about 1,900 miles from Erie. You traveled to the country of Honduras, and I don't know much about it. I don't know why you went, but I did do a little bit of homework on the country of Honduras. And we think we got it tough here. We get stuck in traffic. Things don't work out quite right. Take a little trip to Honduras. Is that right, Ron? And get your eyes opened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of poverty down there. But it is amazing how when you go down there and there's a lot of, people who are hungry, a lot of people who don't have a lot, but the amount of joy and the smiles and there's a part of you that wishes you had a little bit more of that.
Sometimes less is better.
Yeah, definitely.
And who'd you go with?
So, let me just start in case people don't know where Honduras is. If you were to go take Mexico and go down a little bit further, you got Guatemala's next. Then next to that is Belize. And then right under there is Honduras. And basically from there, it's Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama connects into South America. And so this organization that I went with was called All God's Children. And in fact, if people are by a computer or later on want to look at it, it's allgodschildrenhonduras.org. And I first got hooked up with them about 20 years ago. I was 18 and sitting at church, and the executive director had talked about this trip, and he was talking about these kids and the amazing things that were happening. I mean, his stories were unbelievable. And as an 18-year-old, at that point I had gone on a few different mission trips to Mexico and Florida and stuff, but never where I got to actually work with kids. And so me and my buddy at the time, afterwards, after hearing this, were like, man, we got to go down there. And so we talked to him, and thankfully he took a chance and took these 2 knuckleheads down there, because it was a couples trip. They were all 40s and 50s years old, but we're like, I don't care, we want to go. And sure enough, when I went, it changed my life. Just the being able to be down there with those kids. I mean, the work that we did was actually on the orphanage with about 70 kids around us, and they're trying to help us and everything, and that really started everything out. So so this was my fourth time down. It was about a month ago. The executive director called me and said that he had an opening with this Band of Brothers group, they call themselves. It was a group that I had heard of in the past. It was just a group of guys that business owners, guys who were high up in the Chicago area along the Indiana border. Also, there were some guys from Florida and Ohio and Michigan. They all came together, 25 of us, and you went down to this orphanage there in Comayagua, Honduras.
And what this is your fourth trip, which that kind of really surprises me. And what age kids you're working with down there? All age?
Yeah, so what's neat about it is this organization supports about 6 different groups. So there's one under who they call Mama Carmen down there. She's got Hogar de Niños, which is for mostly all the girls, and then the babies up until a certain age. When the boys hit about 3 years old, I believe, they go off to the farm called the Granja. From there, then you also have what they call Buen Pastor, and that actually means Good Shepherd. And what that is, it's a home for girls who have been sexually abused and it's resulted in pregnancy. And so this home helps them be able to take care of their kids, also get them the right schooling, and it even gives their kids some schooling too. Because down there, once something like that happens, tragedy, they're basically shunned from public. Nobody wants them, and so this organization takes them in. There's another one called Misericordia, which is for mentally challenged individuals and basically who are adults, and so they go there and they help them there as well. There's another organization where it's a special needs school, and then another one where it's a school that they've started plus an orphanage. There's like 400 kids at that school.
Yeah, I was reading just a few. I don't know, you can maybe corroborate this with me, but I was reading that the nation's per capita income is about $600 a year. If you average everything out, there's a lot of poverty. 50% of the population still living below the poverty line, according to what I'm reading. And there's what's one of the highest crime countries in the world.
Yeah.
So what all exactly did you do then? You were there, tell me again, how many days were you down there?
I was there 6 days, yeah. And so most of the work that we did, which kind of makes this a little bit unique to any other trip that I've gone on to, so much of the other trips have been focused on the work, painting and doing construction and all that kind of stuff. We did a little bit of that. We did some painting, we did some demolition, but a lot of it was visiting these different organizations and just hanging out with the kids and playing with them. What was neat is the 3 nights that we were there, or 3 of the nights, the first night we got to host a wedding, because down there they do it a little different, where there's a civil union first and then they have to have the wedding. And all of us guys got to be there together. And what was really interesting about that is at the end, it was really important to the people who got married that all of us guys got in that picture because they considered us family. So I thought that was pretty neat, the fact that I had just met these people, but because we're involved in this ministry, we were considered their family. Another thing we got to do was have a daddy-daughter dinner with the girls from that home that I had mentioned that had kids, prematurely or too young. There were actually 12-year-olds. There were 2 12-year-olds sitting there who had been pregnant, who had become pregnant because fathers had molested them. And, to hear their story, we're sitting around this table and hearing what these girls had gone through, because it was kind of like a Thanksgiving dinner. And the guy who was in charge, he gave us the opportunity. Well, he said to everybody, if there's something you're thankful for, please share. And these girls just got up. They thanked God for their life, even though what they had been through. They thanked this organization for giving them this opportunity. And then they thanked all of us guys for being there, because some of them who had been sponsoring them since they were little kids have become father figures in their lives too. And I thought, man, I stood up and just was so thankful, because when I looked around, I thought, man, this is almost like a little piece of heaven, because here we are from all different parts of life. You know, some have gone through a bunch of junk in their lives. Some currently are. We're speaking different languages, but we're all there. We're praising God, giving thanks, crying together, laughing together, eating together. It was pretty powerful moment.
A big, big eye-opener, I'd have to say. I mean, when you come home from something like that, it's got to be like, I've got so much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you go in there with culture shock, and when you come back, you have a little bit of culture shock as well, because, yeah, you're just surrounded by great people. Not that I'm not here, but, you know, it's different there because it's just like 24/7 of relationships.
And now, of the 4 trips, were these all to the same place?
Yes, they were. Yep.
And I'm sure you got lots of stories.
Oh, yeah.
Kids, hit me up with one of those stories. I mean, I know it's amazing to see people having so much joy with with nothing.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, because, I mean, you go down there and you see that they have nothing, and when you put your arms around one of them and they look up at you with this smile that could light up a room, I mean, it just changes you. You know, we kept on going back to this passage in Mark 5 where there's a woman in the Bible talking about how she had been bleeding for 12 years, and Jesus is walking through, and there's crowds and crowds of people, and she is so desperate, and she reaches out to just touch a piece of Jesus' clothes, right? And so she does that, and right away Jesus knows, and he turns around, even though in a crowd of people, and he asks, "Who touched my cloak?" Right? And goes after her, and she falls at his feet, and he calls her out, and he calls her his daughter, family, you know. And we just kept on going back to that. And originally, the person who was leading was talking about the kids in desperation reaching out for Jesus. But really what was happening is we as guys who, as grown men, we were the ones falling to our knees, reaching out for Jesus. And these kids were Jesus for us. And it totally changed us. And it was to the point where, you know, I said that I went there for the first time 20 years ago. I walked into Misericordia, the special needs home for adult women, and I saw a girl that I held in my arms when she was 2 years old who was totally blind. And now I saw her, she was wearing glasses, and I got real close to her, and I said, "Nuvia." And she looked at me, and the translator said to her, "He held you in his arms 20 years ago." And she looked me in the eyes, smiled big, and wrapped her arms around me. It was pretty powerful.
Yeah, that has got to be really powerful. How are all these operations funded? Just donations?
Yeah, mainly donations. I mean, for a very long time, I would say until a couple years ago, Al, who is the executive director and president of the board, never once asked for money. It just started coming in. And then eventually people were like, well, hey, you know, you ought to think about doing where you can sponsor a child. He's like, oh, okay. So then he started this program. Well, money just kept on coming in for that, and people were asking, they wanted to sponsor specific kids, and they've, I got a quick story about that too. That one of the other homes for special needs kids, this lady who started it, Nellie, she brought Al in, and she was like, hey, I got these plans, and I want to put this addition onto one of the schools. He's like, all right. I was hoping to just give you basically a dishwasher, you know, a couple $100. And he's like, all right, how much is it going to cost? She's like, $7,000. He's like, well, that's a big number. Okay. So the next day he gets a call from one of his donator, you know, one of his guys who was willing to give some money. And he said, all right, I want to give it to this and that. And you know what? I got an extra $6,500. Why don't you give it to Nellie? And he was just floored. He couldn't believe it. Almost the exact amount that she needed. They were able to get the addition put onto the school, and that was the end there.
So how many kids would be at one of these locations, maybe, or how many can they handle?
Yeah, so Mama Carmen, with the 4 that she has, there's 200 kids, And then one of the other ones, they have like 25 kids in their orphanage, but then, like I said, there's 400 at the school. Nellie at the school for special needs kids, and there's dormitories there. There's about 100 kids. So there's a good amount there that they're helping out.
Now, do you feel safe when you're there?
We do, actually.
I mean, I'm looking at this fact here that Honduras has the world's highest murder rate and highest levels of sexual violence.
Well, what's interesting is in this area, in Comayagua, there is a military base. So we'll walk in the town center, and they all think we're military. So they kind of stay away from us when it comes to that. And so we also go, everywhere we go with an armed guard. Actually, this time we had 2 armed guards with us. It's funny, you go into a Wendy's or a Burger King, and there's a guy with a big shotgun or a machine gun at the front door. And definitely a good way to keep crime down and keep people from robbing you. But
yeah. That's a little culture shock right there. Now, I know it's what I was reading, population exceeding 9 million, but I don't really know how dense. Were you in, the cities? Pretty packed. Are you seeing upper class and lower class, like a dividing line in some of these cities, or not?
Where we're at, there is somewhat of a dividing line, but you see Land Rovers going through, and then you see these little Nissans that have rust all over them. You see a lot of motorbikes down there and stuff too. That's that's the funny thing too. You will be driving down, you'll see a husband and a wife and their baby with a little baseball helmet on, sitting on a moped, trying to get down, and that's just their only means of transportation. So they do what they can.
What's the layout of the land like there? I don't really know that much about it. Is it mountainous? Yeah,
it actually is really mountainous, and there's a lot of plush green trees and everything as well. It's actually really beautiful there. Probably similar climate to California, I would say.
All right. How do people make their money there? Is it all crops mostly? Do you know how?
There is a lot of farming. Yeah, a lot of coffee farming and everything. But then you go into some of the poorer communities, and we've been taken up into Tegucigalpa, and there's actually a garbage dump there. And that is really sad to see, because you see people who they're digging through the garbage to find recycled goods. And if the one guy who is in charge of finding boxes finds that somebody else is looking for boxes too, when he's supposed to look for plastic bottles, well, they could kill him over it. It's just insane.
These people stake out this dump,
yeah,
and can only look for certain things.
Correct.
And we think we got it rough here because we have to wait 10 minutes for a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've had it where I've gone up into the mountains and we'll have bags of clothes. When people talk about poverty around here, I've done a lot of stuff in the inner city of Chicago as well. And sometimes you may go to somebody with a can of green beans, and they look at the can of green beans, and it might not be Green Giant. So they're like, I don't want these. You go up into the mountains in Honduras with a bag of clothes that, you got an extra large shirt that you're giving to a 7-year-old kid, and he thinks that it's Christmas, and he just got a brand new shirt from Abercrombie. Yeah. That's real poverty, but what's cool is that they're very proud of what they have. You walk up there, and there is a house probably the size of this room, and if people could see this room, it's not a very large room, but mud floors, and they want to pull you into their house, show you what they have, and they're proud of it.
They're proud and they're happy.
Exactly.
With nothing.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
And I think everybody should get a chance to see something like that. I got a chance to do a little bit of traveling myself, see a little bit of the world, and it's tough to explain these sorts of things for someone who's never got out of their little town to see. You can see it on the TV, you can hear it here on the radio, stories about things like this. Do you anticipate another trip back, or is it just hard to say? How often do people go down and do these trips like you were just on?
Yeah, some of the people that I was there with, they actually do go on these trips multiple times a year. So some of the guys that I was with, they'll do this, and then they schedule a family trip in August. And which I would love to be able to do, but it's a very expensive trip.
I was going to say, how do you fund your trip?
Yeah, well, thankfully this time around, it was donated to me. so I was able to go for free this time.
Yeah, long flight can't be cheap.
Yeah, well, the flight to Tegucigalpa is a little bit more expensive than going to San Pedro Sula, which is another airport that they have. So the flight alone is a little over $800 just to get down there. Plus, then you're staying in a hotel, all your food, and then you pay for a lot of the materials that you're using when you're doing some of the work as well.
Do you usually haul things with you or not?
Yeah, so we usually take a whole bag full of stuff. So whether it be tools that we might use, but mostly it's. What's cool is at the main orphanage, they have a store for the kids. So if they're really good, they build up points, and then they can go to the store and buy things with those points. And they're all donations from people who have gone down there, who have filled their suitcases with toys, with shoes, with clothes. And the kids go in there, and I got to see it. It looks like a real store. It's got dressing rooms. It's even got places, baskets full of toys that the kids can check out. So that's a really neat part of it as well.
I got to believe that part of the crime is the unemployment rate, which I'm seeing there's like over 1 million people unemployed there.
Yeah.
They put the unemployment rate at about 30%.
Yeah, and you can see it in how they do the work. So guys are so desperate to work that they're pretty, I don't want to put them down, but very inefficient in the way they're doing work. I mean, for instance, you might see a guy's doing a concrete job, and they got this old junky bucket, and they got one guy that's actually mixing the concrete, filling up the bucket, and passing it down a line of 11 guys until it gets to the part of the wall or the street or whatever it might be, because all 11 of those guys are willing to take barely nothing just so that they have a job and are able to make some sort of an income.
Something.
Yeah.
Something is better than nothing.
Exactly.
So, hey, are they getting ready for Christmas down there? Did you see anything like that while you were there? I'm trying to think. What were they? Was it about 3 weeks ago you were there?
Yep. Yeah. So actually, it's a pretty big event. Feliz Navidad. They got the big signs in the main center there, because our hotel was actually about 3 blocks from the main center, and in the center it has one of the oldest standing churches in the Americas. It actually has the oldest clock in all the Americas too, which is kind of random, but this is their summer break in a way. So everybody's off, all the kids are off of school, so we would walk down there about 10:30 at night, and it was just booming. They had a huge stage set up, they had Christmas lights, they had a great Christmas show. I mean, kids were up there doing programs and stuff like that, and it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and like you say, just a super eye opener. You were telling me a story before you came in about somebody just dropping off babies.
Oh yeah. Well, that's how all this actually got started in the late 80s. Mama Carmen, who I mentioned earlier, she was a nun at the convent, and a woman came because she was concerned about these kids in their home. Their mom had died of cancer. They were living with the dad, who had gotten remarried really quick. She was scared that the kids were going to be abused by the step brothers, and so she just dropped them off at the convent. Well, Mama Carmen, I mean, she just felt the burning in her heart, like, we cannot leave these kids, because the convent wouldn't take them in. So she decided to leave the convent and take these kids. Well, the convent was worried because that was illegal. You couldn't just grab these kids and make them your own at 18. You had to be 21 to try to even get an orphanage going and be able to adopt these kids. And so thankfully the government kind of basically turned their head to this, even though they had gotten the information. And once she was 21, then they gave her the proper paperwork and license to have this orphanage. Well, by that time she had about, I believe it was 20 kids under her wing. And as this thing opened up, people just kept on sending kids there. So pretty powerful that she, even though this young girl, was able to do something about this burden and follow the dream that God had put on her heart.
You mentioned government. We all complain about politics here. Is government much help to them? Is it corrupt? How do you hear much about the government while you're down there?
Yeah, it can be pretty corrupt, but at times it can also work in their favor. For instance, to make the governor around that time looked pretty good. He donated the land for the orphanage to Mama Carmen. But since then, there's been some ups and downs where, you got to give a little here and they got to take a little. So, but for the most part, they stay away and try not to get involved too much with it.
Anybody that wants to look, you gave that website. Is that the best place if you want to check out this organization and what is there? And run that by me again. It's
allgodschildrenhonduras.org. And a lot of these stories that I've told are on there, and the organization and who's leading this organization is on there, and some pictures. There's even a video too. That's pretty powerful video.
And now, are they worldwide?
They are not. No, they're actually focused just on Honduras.
Oh, I was going to say that's a pretty big job right there.
Yeah.
So let alone all the other countries that could use something like this. So, well. You're kind of locked in with the organization.
Yeah.
So good for you. All the better for those people down there. And hey, what else do you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of talked about the smiles. Another cool story is when we were hosting the graduation dinner. One of the kids who had graduated from the university, he was telling his story and just saying what he was thankful for. And one of the things that kind of struck me was that he mentioned that he appreciated the hugs that he got on a consistent basis.
We're talking college
age. Yeah.
College age down there. What's the college like? Have you seen it?
I have not seen the university down there,
okay.
But I hear it's a really nice place, and they try to send as many kids down to the university as possible.
I mean, what are the odds of a Honduras kid graduating from a university down there?
It's very it's still pretty low that they will actually go to the university. Usually they have to have good behavior. They have certain chores that they have to keep up with. They have to show that they're going to be involved in the orphanage while going to the university, and then they will help them with that. But they definitely provide as much opportunity for these kids as possible, until they're 18, and then after that, they hope that they go to the university, and from there, and actually what's neat too is they've given kids opportunities to do internships here in the States. So there have been a couple that have actually there's one right now working on in city Chicago. He knows 4 languages.
How cool.
Yeah. And super smart kid. And he learned 2 of the languages by basically watching YouTube videos. So he got Spanish and English, and then I forget what the other 2 languages are. But
amazing what you can accomplish if you want to. You think he'll wind up staying here? He'll go back?
I think he will stay in the States, yeah, as long as he possibly can. I mean, it's hard when you have a working visa, and, some will then go back to Honduras, and then they won't ever come back.
So is the country pretty religious? I got a fact here now. The CIA fact book lists Honduras as 97% Catholic, 3% Protestant. Do you think that's close?
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of major Catholic roots. I mean, I talked about that oldest church that's a Catholic church. It's huge, and every night that we walked through, it was full. So, some strong Catholic religious roots.
So, what an eye-opener. I wished, everybody could see it. I mean, I'm going to check out that. I haven't got it written down, but I know where you work, and I'm going to check out that website. What questions haven't I asked you that you would like me to ask?
Well, trying to think, looking here. I mean, I guess, I think anytime you can get an opportunity to get away out of your comfort zone and go to a place that's unfamiliar, it does something to you. I've always told people that when you go, it doesn't have to be Honduras. It can be anywhere. And if you allow it to change you, it can. You can't help but go on a trip like this and come back a changed person. You have a new perspective on things. I look at my kids differently. I look at my wife differently. I look at work differently. I mean, it's it's nice to have that fresh perspective again.
And you said it right, out of your comfort zone. It would be so good if you have the opportunity to take your kids down, high school age kids, grade school age kids, to see how the other half live.
Definitely. Yeah, that's my dream. And what's neat is when I was down there, a lot of the kids asked that, are you going to bring your kids? Because whenever I'm around them, I'm always showing them pictures on my phone of my family and what we do together. And they love seeing that. And they love taking pictures, together too, and look at it. It's so fun.
So, yeah. Well, I hope you get the opportunity to take your family down there. Like you say, it's a big economic undertaking.
Definitely.
But well worth it.
It's kind of an investment into your family, into your life, and that's how I got to look at it. And hopefully all the listeners look at it if they get that opportunity.
Yeah, we've got it pretty good here, don't we, Ron?
Yeah, we do.
And, we like to complain, but really we have no excuse to be complaining. Not at all. Well, Ron, anything else?
No, I mean, I have story after story, so it's hard for me to, stop or, figure out which one you'd like to hear. So,
well, I just appreciate you coming in here and, opening a few people's ears and eyes to the situation that you got a chance to go to. Had Ryan Winkler in here talking about, in the past, talking about his trip. Anybody that takes a trip out of the United States, I'm always interested in what's going on out there. And, what I'm taking away from this is people can find joy in a little bit of nothing. And so that's something we need to appreciate. Yeah. What we have here.
Definitely.
In the United States. So,
especially this time of year, it's easy to focus on the things, right? But most of the time it's time spent with each other, with family, and that means the most.
So, well, I'm glad you got to go on that trip. I'm glad you got a chance to come in here, come back anytime you want with any story you want, and we'll do what we can for you.
Thanks a lot, Uncle Tim. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, I am going to turn off your mic. We're going to go back to waiting for Pat Jones to call back in here. We're going to play a little bit of music. And once again, thanks for taking time tonight.
Thank you.